Good morning, YouTube. I'm Greg from GregsTutoringNYC at gmail.com. This is part 3 of a series looking at the 2021 New York City High School Guide and the 2021 SHSAT Handbook. Part 1, we looked at a couple of overview things, how to download the documents and how to, and some overview things like dates and so on. Part 2, we focus on Form A of the SHSAT Handbook. And then this part 3, I'm going to focus on Form B, as well as there's extra grid-on problems at the end of the manual and grade 9 problems also at the end of the manual. Turns out there's a few more concerns to be aware of. So let's jump right into that. The first one is going to be on page 173, and it relates to notation. Let me get this up to a bigger size. So this year they seem to be using more than in past recent years, DBQs, which are document-based questions. So here's an example of that. Again, this is on page 173. So there's going to be questions reflecting about your interpretation of what that illustration or chart or whatever we're going to give you is about in relationship to the words. Remember, this is still in the reading comprehension section. So and they've used it throughout Form A and throughout Form B. So there's a few occurrences. The Department of Education doesn't release an exact list of topics. So all these kind of things get up in the air. On that note, let me point you to two YouTubes that might be helpful in that I've done in the past, 2 live streams in the past. The first one I'm going to post is about the math topics. So this is an overview of math topics I did in the past. It's slightly outdated, but it's still about 99% accurate. Again, accurate to the extent that the Department of Education does not release the topic list. This is just being so familiar with the test and so on. I will probably do another one of these in the near future with some updated information. And this is the Ela Topics. Okay, so if you watch those, it'll give a nice overview of all the topics of what they are. It's not going to go into super specific about each literal question, but for instance, if you don't know it's about exponents and all positive exponents, then you have a problem. So this is going to give an overview, especially in times of coronavirus, where a lot of classes are not going to finish. So you were supposed to have a full 7th grade going into 8th grade, and so on and so on. So for a lot of you, that's not going to be the case. So for argument's sake, if you were going to end on square roots or exponents, your teacher may not actually do that at all, or your teacher may just do it at a real cursory fast level. So this is something you need to dig in deeper. The handbook is not necessarily representative of all this. So anyway, this is a kind of a notational difference, this page 173. The next one I'm going to show you deals with fonts again. I talked about that kind of extensively in the previous one, so I'm just going to do this one real quick. I seem to catch up with this. Yeah, there's about a 30-second delay on YouTube today. I'm not sure why. Let's see, 253. Should be 235. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I have mild dyslexia. I have mild dysgraphia as well, which ties into this point. So again, this is a small nitpick, but this line here, there's divide signs there, and on some devices, in fact, I was looking at this last night, I thought they were actually plus signs. So they really need to change their fonts in here. On test day, it's going to be daylight out. You're going to have light on in the class and stuff, so hopefully that's helpful. But I believe they should still change the font here. So again, this is kind of a nitpick, but it's still an issue. that if you're seeing plus signs, especially enough of you are looking at the handbook digitally on your phone or a tablet, where fonts are super, super tiny. And they could actually change that divide sign font so that it doesn't look the way it is, and that there's no ambiguousness in what you're actually seeing on that. Okay, let me just make sure we're live. Yeah, it seems to imply we are. Okay, the next item is on the same page. So these are errata items. So if we go to page 235, problem number 64, which is this here, it says point B is located at -2. Well, if you go to problem 64 and look at even F, there's no point B. This is about a number line problem. So there's an error there. That should have said point F. Turns out and the answer is F, but it also should be talking about point F. So that's a blatant error right there. The next errata item is on page 256, problem number 5. So this, I believe, was the grade 8 problems. Let me get there. So this is the explanation of the grade 9 problems, not the grade 8 ones. Okay, the problem here is it says the answer is D, and D says there's an infinite number of choices. And if you come down here, it says -12 is equal to 52, which is not true, and therefore no solution, there is no solution to the given equation. Well, no solution is choice number C, so there's an error there. Okay, so this should actually say C and not D over here on this line. Okay, I'm not sure why there's so many errors, but in any event. The next one is the last errata item. So Form B had less problems. In fact, we're actually into the grade 9 and grade 8 stuff. So we get a 187. This is the last errata item I found. If people find additional problems, please either email me or post it in the comments below. I'd prefer in the comments below. That way everybody can see it. Also, I have created a list that you can access through my website. I will give you the link right now before I find the last page, actually. So this errata for all the pages is going to be at that site, GregsTutoringNYC.com/2021 handbook errata.pdf, the PDF, okay? It's currently 2 pages. I will add what I'm talking about here onto it, and it should be about 3 pages, and at some point might even flip into 4. This live stream is kind of wordy, but at some point it's going to be a really succinct document that just lists all the items together and so on, so that it's just handy for you guys. So page 187, problem number 71. There was a question I talked about in the last YouTube. I can't remember which question number it was, where there was a mild possibility to reinterpret the question wrong. I think it was about depositing something in a savings account, where for that one there was really no other choice, because none of the other numbers would have conflicted with it. In this one, it turns out there's 2 answers that might be able to possibly fit into it. Let me bring it up for a second. Okay, so it's page 187, question number 71. And the problem hits into where it says, Karen reads yada yada. If 2 students begin 1,500 paid reading assignments on the same day, how many days will it take them? The problem is when you do some of the computations, Even though the answer comes out to an even number, if you see the choices there, 4, 5, 7, and 15, sometimes when two answers are close together, it could be hard to determine what's what. The problem is that if Martina starts the problem at 11:59 p.m. of a certain day, let's say it's Wednesday today, Karina starts the problem at 11:59 p.m. today, almost up right at midnight. And Karen starts it at 12:01 a.m. In other words, it's 23 hours and 58 minutes between them. But I can make the example even closer and closer, where it's literally 24 hours. So that they both start on the same day, but one starts just at the stroke of midnight, and the other starts at the stroke of midnight on the other side of the day, 24 hours later. So when you do that computation, it turns out it could be 4 days in like 1 second. So when you're left with something like that, it could be hard to sometimes determine this. And you could argue, well, as long as it's 1 second over, it can no longer be 4 days. Okay, because the question number 71 doesn't talk about estimating or rounding or anything like that. So you would bump it up to 5, but there is a little ambiguousness here, where if they said at the same time instead of on the same day, they should have really said at the same time. All right, so there's stuff like that because it can lead to confusion. If I have four days and 0.01 seconds, you know, does it flip into the 5 days or not? Depends how you interpret the question. And this one's kind of nitpicky, but it's still the situation there. All right, so again, I read all of Form A, I read all of Form B. These are the problems I was able to detect. If anybody else finds any more, or you have questions as you're going over them, please hit me up about that. Now, remember, if you watch part 1 and part 2 of this, if you're intending to take the SHSAT, do not go through these problems yet. Wait for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Wait until it's closer to the actual SHSAT test date, which might end up being delayed because of coronavirus. Right now, the Department of Education is saying the SHSAT is going on as planned, but if social distancing aspects are still in place, or a second wave of coronavirus hits, I don't know that's going to happen. I don't know if some of you realize on the SHSAT days, and there's a couple of them, there's about 4 or 5 of them, you know, you're going to go into some of the larger schools like Brooklyn Tech, Madison and Brooklyn, and some of the others, and go into large auditoriums and classrooms and whatnot. So if social distancing is still a concern, that's not going to happen that way. So just slight heads up to watch out about that. In any event, there's third-party resources, there's things to do online, there's getting a tutor, where you can do a whole bunch of other problems that are not these ones. And the reason I'm saying that is to hold off, because this is the official document from the DOE. And if you do this first, then if you do the other ones, they're never quite the same. That said, let me give an overview of both of these forms and the grade 9 and the extra grade and grade 8 problems. Last year, I felt that the math part got easier, and the ELA part probably got harder. This is probably on par with that, where this year the math may have even got slightly easier, and the ELA may have gotten slightly harder again. Okay, if nothing else, it's on par to my observations from last year. I don't have the link for that handy. I could point you guys to that, but it's basically the 2020 New York City High School Guidance Specialized Handbook discussion. There's 2 or 3 of those as well that I did at the time. So my overview is that I wish the examples in the handbook were harder. Some of them are quite trivial. Some of them don't even seem to be SHSAT Handbook style problems. Some are really, really super easy. The SHSAT's supposed to be testing your knowledge and thinking out of the box and doing critical thinking and so on. And some of the questions they have are just, some are almost barely just testing your knowledge. And so I wish they used harder problems. There is some political debate about the SHSAT, and I think the Department of Education is pulling a few fast ones underneath here. But in the event, the test is still a hard test. There's still a lot of topics to go through. And again, even though I'm saying to postpone actually using the handbook problems, definitely read the high school guide, definitely read the handbook, learn everything about the test that they provide and tell you about. Just don't do the problems yet. Okay, just be aware that the first part's about grammar and the ELA. The second part's about revising and editing, sentence structure, and sequencing and things like that. And then there's all the math stuff. You know you should know grade 5 math. You know you should know grade 6 math. You know you should know grade 7 math, and so on. The handbook claims that the test is only about, if you've taken a grade 8 SHSAT, it's only about up to grade 7. If you've taken a grade 9 SHSAT, it's only up to grade 8. But it goes further than that, okay? Especially, again, with you guys missing so much class because of coronavirus. So again, I posted the topic lists to the side in the chat, and that should be it. So overall, there's no real surprises here. If you go to part 2 of this, I do mention the formatting and the other issues where they did, not only did they change, I don't mean formatting and they changed, just changing the fonts, but formatting like they add the DBQ into this, that they're now giving, instead of writing some of the number sentences from left to right, they're doing it up and down. There's also some slightly more involved numerator and denominators, where they haven't done that, at least in the recent past. So that changes the dynamics of how you're going to approach the test, because problems, even though the DOE never listed the topics, they are slightly changing the way the topics are being presented. Now, this all said again, we don't know what's going to be on the SHSAT on actual test day, right? It may be none of the problems or none of the types of examples in the handbook. Doesn't mean not to practice them. And it means if you went through this handbook and categorized this, that, oh, there's 3 DBQs and there's 1 poem and there's whatever. That's not the way it's going to look. The state test works the same way, where there's 200, 300, 400 topics and subtopics within each one. And then within each subtopic, there's 10 different ways they can ask that question. So there's a possibility of literally thousands of questions that you could be asked there. In the meantime, there's only 114 across two topics, so it's 57 each. That's not a lot of questions when you think about it. So out of the hundreds of possible subtopics and the thousands of possible tweaks and variations of each, they're only picking 57. So you have to be prepared to do any of the thousands. So again, it's like if you don't know a topic at all, like for grade 9, you may need to know what a scatter plot is. Okay, a lot of people ask, you don't need to know SOHCAHTOA, you don't need to know the quadratic formula and things like that. But you don't need to know to the extent that the DOE was never required those to be used to solve problems. But if you happen to know them, you're going to have a leg up on it. All right. So that's the overview. Again, please put comments below if you find extra things. The link to the handbook is on the side. Actually, I'll post it below as well. And if you have any questions, please email me. Hopefully you find these useful, and this is going to help your SHSAT prep for you or your child. Please please subscribe. I'm going to be doing more of these, including explanations of problems. I already have hundreds of them with hundreds of hours of SHSAT prep, where I'm covering grade 7 material, which is useful for the SHSAT. I'm covering grade 8 material, which is useful for the SHSAT. I actually do variations where I do Q&A sessions that people can ask. So that's text-based, but it's still be helpful. Like how does registration work? You may want to know about things like that. And I have YouTubes about that anyway. I also have live streams where I actually went over whole handbooks. Okay, and there's other ones where I've hunted and pecked where I may have made a theme of one where I just talked about exponents and so on. So there's a myriad stuff on my channel. Please subscribe. I'm going to continue to do more. And peace out and enjoy your day.